Zero's shot was so powerful that it blasted a robot with one hit. That was without using the mystic eyes of death perception. Not even cultivators like Luo Yinglong could withstand a hit on the point of death. The robot exploded and Gondo descended from above. The Valkyrie stepped onto a blue robot. The progressive blade stabbed downward but missed the robot and slid off from its armor, igniting a string of flares. That is a first-generation Decepticon that came from space. It's the leader of this group and possesses much tougher armor. Take down the other robots instead. A troop yelled. They had obviously realized the transforming mecha belonged to neither the Decepticons nor Autobots. The identity of the new party were still unknown to them, but the strength they had shown that rivaled the robots gave them hope. The blue robot displayed its superiority over the other Decepticons as it turned around and seized the Valkyrie's foot. It smashed the Valkyrie to the ground. Do you think EOT is so easily defeated? A stream of electricity burst out from the Valkyrie's other foot. The armor that withstood the progressive blade was fragile as paper in the presence of this electricity. It sliced through the armor without friction. The control sticks danced madly under Gondo's hands. His hands had nearly disappeared from sight due to their speed, and sparks occasionally flare up. What was even more stunning were the movements of the Valkyrie. Its hands pressed on the ground and pushed it up several meters. The Valkyrie mounted on the top of the blue robot. Hundreds of missile openings were exposed over all areas of the Valkyrie and all aimed at the blue robot's chest. Go to hell. All fire! Gondo shouted. The guided missiles, reaction missiles, micro missiles all blasted onto the blue robot from such a short distance. The explosions enveloped both robots and a large area around them. Several robots within the area were blasted away. Zheng and his party rose to nearly 2,000 meters above. Campa's rapid-fire RPG began to roar. This was also a future sci-fi weapon. Its size and weight limited the user to one with a big and strong body. The RPG compressed and shot air in opposite direction to reduce the force of recoil. Campa also enhanced his body enough to use the weapon at will. The RPG turned the battlefield into a sea of fire nearly instantaneously. Dust and dirt blew up over 10 meters in multiple places. The unlimited ammunition nature of the weapon kept the explosions happening without a pause. It wasn't until the Valkyrie flew out in its jet mode did Campa slow down. The troops were stunned by what they saw. American troops were proud of their technology and mechanical militarization before the appearance of the Transformers. They were at the top among all the armed forces in the world. However, that changed when the Transformers came with more advanced, more powerful weapons. Their numbers increased at a horrifying rate. They had bodies that were extremely difficult to take down. They could wipe out an army of tanks with under 100 robots. And now one small robot and a strange flying device destroyed these Transformers in under 10 minutes. Team China were not relieved despite destroying this group of Decepticons with ease. The strength the Decepticons displayed was nothing to overlook. Just a few dozen of them had depleted over 80% of the Valkyrie's energy. They could rely on the American military to resupply the ammunition, but only Zheng could recharge chi. Furthermore, the Valkyrie's energy storage unit was much larger than their dragon's hard necklaces. What would happen if the other members came under attack by so many Transformers? What would happen if the Transformers came in numbers over hundreds? Everyone's face looked terrible from just the thought of this possibility. The sky stick descended onto the troops. Zheng discussed with Xian and Honglu on the way, then walked off the sky stick. The troops came up to them. A colonel held out his hand to Zheng and said, "Andrew Roosevelt. We thank you for the aid that prevented the annihilation of our regiment. Which division do you belong to?" Zheng said. "Ahem. You can call us Terminators. Let us leave this place first. Many robots are approaching from the city." The psyche scan detected nearly 300 robots of all sizes coming to them from the city. Most of these robots did not possess the ability to transform, and many only 2 to 3 meters in height. These were probably newly created robots under the Allspark's power. However, there were also 100 that could transform. The sky and land were taken by these varying vehicles. There were over 10 jets, 10 helicopters, and many tanks, fire trucks, vans, and other cars. The scene from the psyche scan was magnificent. The colonel shouted to his troops and gave orders to the lieutenants. "Do you have any plans? Care to come with us to Shelter 7? The nearby civilians are migrating to the shelter. Your firepower will be able to cover the migration." Zheng looked to his team, then turned back to the colonel and accepted the request. Gondo stayed inside the Valkyrie while the rest of the team sat on the sky stick. This allowed them to fight back or run if the robots caught up to them. 300 robots were not a joke. Fortunately, the robots stopped chasing after reaching 10 kilometers beyond the city. The human party had long left the area by the time they arrived. They looked over at the robots in the distance, then entered the mountain under the side of the robots. Megatron seized the Allspark from the boy. The Autobots were no match for him and he left with the Allspark. A few days later, a robot uprising stormed New York. All mechanical objects turned into deadly robots under the power of the Allspark. You thought those 300 robots in the city were a lot? There were hundreds of thousands in New York on that day. The Allspark's power spread from New York, and our fighter jets, tanks, and other weapons turned to robots. Only these old tanks are not affected by its power. We wouldn't have lost so fast otherwise. Lan confirmed there were no robots in the area via psyche scan, so Zheng came down from the sky stick. He built up rapport with the colonel to gain information on this world. The colonel obviously valued Team China and told everything he knew. Zheng frowned. It sounds like only a week has passed since the battle over the Allspark. What happened to the Autobots? The colonel smiled bitterly. Who knows? Perhaps they have died. Or perhaps they have turned into Decepticons. Humans no longer place our hope on them. All the major and middle-sized cities in the US have been destroyed. Robots swarmed all modernized cities throughout the world. Japan, China, India, Europe, and even the drilling rigs in the Middle East have turned into robots. Extinction to humans is near. The party climbed over a hill that wasn't too steep. A valley came into sight. Tents were set up throughout the valley. This was Shelter 7. Shelter 7 might not sound too bad, but the fact was it was a refugee gathering area. The American military stationed 10,000 men here plus 70 ancient tanks. There were no jets, no computers or any other mechanical objects. Zheng followed the colonel and the 1,000 troops into the base. Xian had sent him message that he had come in contact with the commander of the base using the identity People from the Future. People from the Future, we came from 2077 through a time machine. This war between Transformers and humans lasted tens of years. Our technology advanced and so did the Transformers. The two parties came to a standoff. We are the special soldiers the government sent back in time. Zheng said what they had planned. The 10 officers in front of him looked shocked. It was clear that they were hesitating and suspicious, yet also excited. One officer said, "The future government only sent the few of you. What result will it achieve? What technologies have you brought back? Weapons? Time machine?" Another officer asked loudly. "Which country are you from? Why is there only one Russian and so many Asians?" Zheng looked to his teammates then said, Have you watched any sci-fi films on human vs robots in the future? I am referring to regular robots." A black officer replied, "I have seen the Terminator, which mentioned people in the future travel to the present to protect an important person who will become a leader. You don't happen to have the same goal of protecting a future leader?" Zheng laughed. "How could that be? An individual's effect in a war that determines the survival of the species is negligible. Our team's mission is to change the future. The Terminator is similar to our future. Humans reached the brink of extinction but we survived and counterattacked. Our population is very small in the future. The 12 of us are big enough to form a sizable special group. Furthermore, the Earth is riddled with wounds. What do you expect such a future to give you?" The oldest officer of the group nodded. He was a major. "That is how I see our future. Although not surviving but wiped out by the robots. Seeing you here lets me know that humans have not given up hope. This is great. I just have a few questions. What country are you from? The races in this group seem skewed. And why does the government believe the 12 of you can rival the Transformer army?" Zheng scratched his head. "There are no countries in the future. All humans band together in order to fight the robots. As to why our races are skewed, I haven't considered it. We were selected based on our strengths. Perhaps Asians are better suited for time traveling. On the second question, don't you think humans can evolve after fighting such a long war?" Zheng looked around and found a tin cup. He grabbed the cup then gave it a light grip. The cup crushed inward. When he opened his hand, what was left of the cup was only powder. It seemed as though a mysterious force corroded the cup. The officers couldn't utter a word after watching this scene. They didn't see any trick from Zheng, or perhaps this trick was beyond their understanding. Zheng's story sounded inconceivable. However, if what he said was true, they were the final straw the American government could cling onto. Team China also brought back technologies beyond Earth's current technological level. The Sky Stick, the Valkyrie, the rapid-fire RPG were all evidences that they came from the future. The officers transmitted their information to Shelter 1 as soon as possible. It was the most complete military base of America. "Your mechanical equipment are future tech, but I would still advise you to leave the Sky Stick behind. The Allspark's power reaches every place. If the Sky Stick turned into a transformer in the air, you will have nowhere to run." The message regarding Team China caused a stir among the higher-ups of the American government. They immediately ordered Shelter 7 to escort Team China to Shelter 1 with half their troops. Zheng refused this order. That wasn't to say he refused to head to Shelter 1. Xian and Honglu both had intentions to meet the government higher-ups. It was nearly impossible for them to find the Allspark in such a world without the aid of the American government and military while being attacked by robots. What he refused was being escorted by several thousand troops. Their power without jets or tanks was limited. Furthermore, marching with several thousand troops came with a higher risk of being detected by the robots. They would be in danger if a few hundred robots came at the same time. It was better to just fly over using the Sky Stick. Team China could easily take on robots in groups of less than 100. The American government showcased its bad habit again. A group of so-called researchers wanted to inspect the Sky Stick, the Valkyrie, the RPG. They also firmly proclaimed the rest of the team were hiding future techs, one of them being an energy shield. The 1,000 troops were witnesses to the energy shield. And so came the request for Team China to leave the Sky Stick behind, given the excuse that they might be affected by the Allspark. Zheng refused firmly. The higher-ups might have given other orders as the researchers left disappointed after seeing Zheng stand. Funny. Taking a bite off everything is probably a trait of the American government. I suspect similar things will happen in Shelter 1. Zheng found it both funny and irritated. Campo laughed. Every country is the same. They are of course interested after seeing our weapons and equipment. If we seized or destroyed the Allspark, the country with the biggest power is going to be the boss when humans rebuild their society. The same thing will happen whether we are in the US, Russia, or China. Everyone's going to get their hands on our technology at the first chance. The only thing stopping them now is their need for our powers. Kampa was rational with his words. It might be due to him being the only Caucasian in Team China. He did not see things with China's interest in mind. The rest of the members nodded as they listened. Ethics did not apply when things concerned the whole country. A country would do everything for its prosperity, even murders. Zheng said. You're right. The Chinese have a saying of hiding your wealth. We have now showed our wealth under bright daylight. The question becomes, when will the American government show their claws to rob us? Haha. We aren't scared though. Our target is the Allspark. Their first priority is to destroy the Decepticons. Once we finish our mission and return, they won't even have the chance to rob us. Let's go. To Shelter 1. Team China left Shelter 7 on the Sky Stick. They traveled through a desolate land. Occasionally, they would see small armies escorting civilians toward Shelter 7. The American government was exceptional in this respect for putting their citizens above everything. Corruption existed in the government, but government workers still valued the citizens. Whether it was for the people's support or they actually respected people was a different question. American government workers were better than those who couldn't even be bothered to put on an act as they stepped over their citizens. Anyway, Zhen was focused on controlling the Sky Stick. The map he obtained showed that the distance between Shelter 1 and Shelter 7 was a quarter the length from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. That was pretty far enough. They had to fly over several major cities. It looks like the cities aren't safe anymore. I don't know how many Decepticons came from space. But the Allspark can create over 100,000 powerful big robots once its power spreads over a whole city. Smaller robots such as TVs, fridges, computers, washers might even reach millions. Where have these robots gone? Honglu frowned. Team China carefully approached a major city on the way. Lan easily obtained the information within the city via psyche scan. The whole city was in a silence. There was not a single living human, only several hundred robots of varying sizes and street animals. Interestingly, the robots did not wipe out the animals. Xian nodded. In the original plot, the Transformers possessed a civilization much more advanced than the civilization of Earth. They can mask radar scans. They can cut off human connection and control to satellites and other mechanical objects. All they have to do is kill every human on the way and mask the satellites from humans, or even just send the first-generation Transformers to destroy the satellites in order to conceal their traces while they migrate. Honglu and Xian met eyes with each other. Honglu affirmed. If we are right, the Allspark is located within their gathering places. That is the only reason for the robots to gather and defend a place. Now, the key is, how do we find this location? Furthermore, how do we face the tens of millions of robots there? I don't believe our strength can rival an army of over 1,000 robots. They are not the half-orcs you fought in the previous movie. Zheng smiled. He knew Honglu had been asking Zero about Xian's past during these days. He did not look well after hearing Xian's plan in The Lord of the Rings. It wasn't until after he entered Transformers did he calm down, or more precisely, after he saw Xian again. I just hope they don't get into any conflicts. But Honglu has been with the team for several movies. Xian isn't someone who gets mad. As long as he realizes Honglu will not do any harm for the team, he probably won't scheme him. However, Honglu isn't a weakling. He can probably deduce Xian's plan if it isn't anything unimaginable. Xian ignored the taunt in the last sentence. He frowned and muttered. It looks like that thing is required to take care of the problem. That thing? Zheng's ears stood up. He yelled without a second thought. Xian. I know you are thinking of something new. Speak it. F***CK. If I hear a no, I will smash the sword at you. He drew Tiger Soul out of the NA ring, and along with it came the white mist. Zheng had grown a deep hatred to this tone of talking by Xian. He didn't feel much before. As long as the plan was good for the team, it didn't matter that he became a piece of the plan. He would just curse Xian after the fact. However, in the last movie, Xian included his own death as part of the plan. It was a fake one, but it could also be a real death, so Zheng was enraged and had to get Xian make it clear. Honglu sneered. What else can it be? That thing can only be nuclear weapons. You're planning to get the password to the nuclear weapons from the American government, right? Xian nodded. The situation is pretty simple. Humans have nuclear weapons but are scared to use them. The robots have no fear of nuclear radiation. The Allspark's location hasn't been confirmed. So even if they were to wipe off a large number of the robots, the Allspark can create them back as long as it existed. Robots aren't worried about the environment while humans feared for the destruction of the Earth. I am certain the US hasn't used nuclear weapons yet. However, we are different. We don't need to live in this world. So once we get the password to the nuclear weapons and find the location of the Allspark, we can drop 10 nuclear bombs before searching through an annihilated city. The Transformers possess intelligence and came from a higher level civilization, so they are aware of the power of nuclear weapons. If the humans learned of the location of the Allspark, they couldn't be certain that humans will not use nuclear weapons. There's definitely something that can defend against nuclear weapons, at least over the Allspark. Honglu pulled a strand of hair and interrupted Xian. I get your plan. You are going to do this in Shelter 1. We know the habits of the American government. They will want to get their hands on our equipment. They can't put us under house arrest since this is a time of crisis. However, they will find various reasons or straight up steal our equipment. During this time, you can steal the control over nuclear weapons through the computer or other methods. I know you are proficient with computers, so it isn't difficult for you. What I am curious about is how are you going to find the Allspark? Xian wasn't irritated at Honglu in the least bit. He turned to Gondo instead. Are you scared of dying? Gondo lost his mind for a second. Then he shouted like when someone stepped on the tail of a cat. How can I not be scared of dying? Are you threatening me with one of your plans? F***ck. Don't treat me like Zheng. Even if I have to risk my life, I can at least run. Gondo was going to talk back but he wasn't Zheng. After struggling for words, he was scared of Xian's plans and could only say he was going to run. Honglu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could see that Xian had deep influence over this team. It wasn't possible for him to overthrow Xian's authority. Furthermore, Xian did possess the skills, although slightly below him. He had thought of everything Xian planned and had a backup plan that Xian didn't think of. Xian continued talking to Gondo. Not a plan. There are two places we need you. 1. The Valkyrie can search through the US in the shortest time to find the gathering place of the robots. The first task is for you and Zheng to split up and search the US land can go with Zheng and scan each city. Though you are going to need to shoot a few missiles at the cities. The robots will all come out seeing that you are also a robot. If there are a lot of robots gathered in the city, they are going to attack you. Gondo breathed out and said. That isn't too dangerous. The electric jet system gives the Valkyrie higher speed than the sky stick. So I just need to lure the robots out and see which city has the most? Xian shook his head. The electric jet system can get you away in an instant. The true danger isn't from the robots, it's the power of the Allspark. Even a car will turn into a transformer, not to mention a robot. If the Allspark is truly in the city, and the Valkyrie gets near, you being inside the Valkyrie. Gondo couldn't utter a word. He opened his eyes wide and stared at Xian, seemingly lost and frozen in place. The time was dawn when Team China arrived at Shelter 1. Everyone let out a sigh of relief upon seeing the space because it was a modernized military base. There was a complete airport and barracks. The civilian tents were separated from the rest. A modern research building was guarded. And best of all, there were high-tech weapons such as the newest Apache attack helicopters and tanks that hadn't been turned into transformers. A few helicopters took off as the sky sticks appeared in the distance. The two parties had communicated in advance so the helicopters guarded the sky sticks until they reached Shelter 1. Shelter 1 was located on a flat plain, the mountains. A river flowed through this plain. So there were way more troops and civilians stationed in this shelter. Basically all the civilians that survived in the surrounding cities had gathered here. The population approximated 2 millions, crowding this spacious plain. The United States was one of the leading countries prior to the catastrophe of Transformers. Despite 99% of its cities were destroyed, the reserves stockpiled by the federal government and those remained in the smaller cities and towns could feed several million people for a period of time. Still, distress overtook the government officials. It wasn't limited to just the US though. The US suffered the heaviest damage, almost wiped out. New robots were being created in other countries rendering all high-tech weapons useless. While the number of robots increased, humans were dying off without the same replenishment. Computer calculations estimated the time before human extinction was approximately 1 year. The end is nigh for the human species was nothing more than a false prophecy at any other time. It would only appear in fictions, movies, or games. Our concerns regarding extinction were only worries in regard to the environment, to nature, and to nuclear weapons. Even the most pessimistic person would not believe that date to come in a year. However, the countdown had started in reality. Team China's appearance was especially important in this situation. If what they said was true, then humans did not walk down the path of extinction as predicted. Humans rose from a disadvantageous position until they stood on even field with the robots. Time machine was invented in under 100 years. Some politicians sighed as they realized war was the force behind technological advancements. Team China disembarked from the sky sticks. 1,000 troops surrounded the airport. A political figure and 10 researchers with white hair rushed to the team. A man at least half a century old grasped Zheng's hand and said, "You come at the right time. We are grateful, the citizens of America thank you. People of the world thank you." He dragged Zheng toward the modernized building. Zheng smiled bitterly as he looked back. The researchers fenced around the sky sticks like people that had been starved. Xian acted heartlessly. He handed a bag to Zero. Zero then opened it up and put the 2 sky sticks into the bag in front of everyone. He folded the bag like a handkerchief. He didn't give it back to Xian and instead put it into his shirt pocket. Spatial. The researchers were dumbfounded as they pointed at Zero. Spatial technology. Have humans of the future reached the applications of spatial technology already? How is this accomplished? Special materials that can cause a change in the electromagnetic field, or space compression. The researchers clung onto Zero. The rest of the team quickly went over to Zheng. The old man's face twitched, but he immediately pulled himself together and put on a smile. Let's go to conference room first. We can leave the discussion on technologies for later. I think no one wants to delay any longer. Every second we lose is at the cost of the lives of tens of thousands of people and the same number of increase for the robots. Frankly, I wish for you to wipe out the robots as soon as tomorrow. The old man tried to snoop information from them, but Zheng was experienced at derailing the conversation. The politicians didn't get anything out of him by the time they reached the building. The group entered the conference room and Zero was finally freed from the researchers. On the other end of Shelter 1, a few dozen people were anxiously staring at a screen that showed an X-ray. A corridor that Team China walked by just then was under the scan of an X-ray machine. It would show whether they were humans or robots in disguise. No issues. They are real humans, every one of them. Their bodies are beyond impressive. The weakest one in the group is still at least twice stronger than our best soldier. And I don't know how to describe their leader. They really are humans from the future. Humans that have evolved. Despite claiming to be sent from the future, the government was cautious of Team China due to their sudden appearance. The thing was, if Team China from their future to save the Earth, then some things had to be given access to them. These things were the last hopes of humans. Therefore, the government must know whether they were humans, and furthermore, humans that weren't controlled by the Decepticons. They can't be. Our civilization is built on the infinite energy of the Allspark. Our form of life is a cycle of robot, energy, and reconstruction. Humans are a species based on genetics. We have no research nor prior contact with this species, as you are the first similar species we have met. Thus, we could not have obtained a method to control humans. Megatron is a tyrant who only knows to destroy everything. He will never cooperate with humans. A voice sounded next to the old man's ears. The old man finally let out a sigh of relief. He put the headset back into his pocket, then walked into the conference room. My apologies to keep you waiting. Let us now start the discussion of putting an end to the catastrophe brought by the alien robots. There were a total of 60 people, including politicians, military officers, researchers, and other related personnels from the US. Team China only had 12 people, but everyone was looking at them with hope, doubt, hesitation, and contempt. The old man said. Ahem. I was the Vice President of the US, Andrew Roosevelt. I took office after the previous president died in the catastrophe. The current statistics of the US is 13 million survivors spread over from Shelter 1 to Shelter 9 and some smaller towns. We have 1.2 million soldiers. However, only Shelter 1 still possesses a small quantity of heavy equipment and mechanical weapons. Our current situation is not promising. Most countries in the world are at a similar state to the U.S. Humans have come to the final line before extinction. Director of the National Security Agency, please brief on our situation. He turned to a tough-looking middle-aged man. The man saluted and said, Yes. Mr. President. The only reason the Decepticons haven't come to wipe us out is because they have other priorities on hand. We have no way of defending an attack from them. There are only 100,000 soldiers stationed in each base from Shelter 3 to Shelter 9. Their military equipment are extremely outdated. They only had the oldest tanks and lacking in heavy firearms. No air support. No access to satellite information. Nothing. Their defense is nothing more than a piece of paper to the Decepticons. One slight poke and it will break open. Shelter 1 and Shelter 2 are our hopes. We retained a lot of armed vehicles and air weapons. But these are not enough to fight the stronger Decepticons. They also had the advantage of numbers. My advice is to use nuclear weapons. It is the only way to save humans from extinction. The director of NSA was dressed in a military uniform and spoke with the tone of people from the military. He was nearly shouting by the end of his words. The politicians and officers debated. Quite a few were agreeing to using nuclear weapons, but they were not the majority. Almost none of the politicians agreed with it. Gentlemen, calm down. We have talked with other countries the last time and unanimously agreed we should not use nuclear weapons. If the US started this trend, all countries in possession of nuclear weapons will begin to bomb cities containing robots. When such time comes, we would have no need for a countdown. As we know, ocean water can isolate objects from the power of the Allspark. So nuclear submarine aren't affected, but that also means a large quantity of nuclear weapons still exist. Let us hear what the future warriors have to say. I believe they will show us the light. Roosevelt sighed. Xian stood up before Zheng got to talk. First. It is impossible for 12 people to fight all the robots in the world. Our strategy is to find the location of the Allspark and destroy it. Once the robots lose their source of energy, we can either fight an attrition war or use a limited amount of nuclear weapons. The survival of humans is guaranteed after we kill the majority of robots. So the first task is to find the Allspark. We cannot accomplish this task by ourselves. We need help from the military and government. Secondly, our weapons are also mechanical objects and have the risk of turning into transformers, which will lower our strength by a large margin. In order to prevent this from happening, we need to know the reason of why the mechanical objects in this place haven't been converted. Is it due to the electromagnetic field of this place? All 60 people turned to the president. The old man hesitated. He silently looked over Team China before he sighed. Follow me. They are the last hope of humans. They protected us from the power of the Allspark. I think the answer you want lies in them. The inside of the research building was a completely different world. The floors reached hundreds of meters beneath ground level. Its total space was extremely large and was enough to accommodate all the civilians living in the tents outside. Zheng was feeling confused as he followed the movie characters. He had Len connected him to Honglu, then asked. Was it Xian's idea to claim us as humans from the future? There's no other way to explain where we came from. Plus, we need an important identity since we have to get the American government's help for this war. Yet do you really think this lie fit the situation we are in? The vice president said the last hopes of humans are here, but we don't even know what they are. And Xian didn't even bother to explain. I think there are just so many flaws in claiming we come from the future to help this war. Honglu sighed. This is where Xian is smart. Do you remember his plan to steal the password to the nuclear weapons? Do you believe it will be so easy to steal something that affects the fate of humanity? It won't be possible with just his hacking skills. People on Earth would have been extinct long ago if a hacker can steal a password and simply press a button. This absurd identity is probably one of his steps to stealing the nuclear weapons. Zheng was more confused than before. He entered the third stage to simulate Honglu's mode of thinking. Ever since he reached the fourth stage, his simulation could reach 50 to 60% of the original person. This percentage continued to increase as his power grew. You mean the identity of future humans is a setup Xian planted since the beginning? Zheng asked. Honglu nodded. Correct. His plan is to let you claim that we are future warriors. This excuse will be full of flaws, such as what do future humans have to isolate their weapons from the Allspark's power? If there was no such thing, why did we bring our weapons back in time? If we can isolate it, why would Xian ask for a way to do so during the conference? The only possibility I can come to is this is a fraud. A fraud? Zheng felt the bulbs lighted up. I get it. He intentionally let the government know we are fakes, which would lead them to put us under surveillance. Probably with needle cams or something. He would then act like we have obtained the password and change it. Once the people overwatching us see it, and just like what people normally do when something is stolen, they would first check if that really happened. They might confirm the password in a secret location, but no place can escape the psyche scan. This plan is splendid. Honglu wasn't looking too happy. Right. This plan is splendid. The key is, since the password would not be changed, the government would only think we trolled them. Given that we are fighting for humanity and we have the strength and equipment people in this world lack, they can only hand the mission to us. The fake identity is merely a tool to connect us with the government. So what if aren't actually from the future? Xian is truly amazing. Zheng laughed and comforted him. You are not bad either. You figured it out in such a short amount of time. Not only did you see every step of his plan, but also what he was thinking. Haha. If he ever pulls any schemes again, you have to let me know as soon as possible. Honglu shook his head. He pulled a strand of hair from above the forehead. If it's just the analysis and deduction, you can also see part of his plan when you stand at the same height and possess the same information with your intelligence. Hey, what do you mean with my intelligence? Are you saying my intelligence is embarrassing? Zheng was furious and shouted in his mind. Do you expect muscles to think? Zheng put out his hands and continued. People standing near him can see the analysis clearly. That is, unless he schemes his own team. However, analyzing and doing are two separate things. I can think of nuclear weapons and stealing the password, but I couldn't set up a plan with such ease. He started calculating since the very beginning when you mentioned we came from the future. I couldn't achieve this. Zheng laughed. It's fine. There are far and few people who can do what you did. You are at least within top 5 in intelligence in all the teams in this realm. However, Xian is the most inhuman person in this regard that I have ever met. Honglu smiled coldly. How do you know that I am not as good as him? Just wait. Quick wit does not equate to wisdom. He can think of the password. Why can't I come up with something else? Just wait and see. So that means Honglu has his plan. Hope they don't drag the team behind to compete their intelligence. Man. Some teams don't even get a strategist, and we are troubling over 2 of them. Sometimes you just don't realize how fortunate you are. Zheng thought. The elevator descended several hundred meters down from the floor of the conference room and was still going down. A minute later, the elevator stopped and the door opened. Outside of it were numerous people moving busily. There were military troops, researchers, and people dressed normally. It was a platform with access to multiple corridors. Team China also saw the final hopes of humanity, or perhaps they were hopes. 2 half-broken robots lay on the platform. One of them was huge. It looked like Optimus Prime. The other was smaller and had a yellow body. It was probably Bumblebee. The 2 robots were damaged but could still move and talk. They were still alive. The president sighed. They are our last hopes. The only 2 surviving Autobots. The sparks in their chests protected the space from the power of the Allspark. Shelter 2 has another Autobot. The 3 of them destroyed a lot of Decepticons in the war, but they lost in the end. The Allspark was seized and the Autobots nearly wiped. Xian nodded. Then the issue with our weapons is settled. The Autobots certainly have a way to protect them, or at least protect a small amount of weapons. The final question is, how can we find the main base of the Decepticons in order to seize or destroy the Allspark? Roosevelt sighed. There are no good methods. We can only send more troops to scout, but their fates are likely. You should meet with Optimus Prime first. Perhaps you can come up with an idea. As for the 3 Autobots, they might be. Roosevelt didn't finish his sentence. He turned around and walked to Optimus Prime. This robot was damaged all over and was missing a leg. He raised his head to look at the group. He even greeted Roosevelt politely. Roosevelt explained the issue with Team China's weapons. Optimus Prime was silent for a while before he said, "Take the spark from my chest. Radiate your weapons with the spark. The neutral energy of us Autobots can protect them from Allspark's power. This is the only way you can approach the Decepticons with your weapons." Bumblebee suddenly said. You can't. You will die from this. Optimus Prime looked at Bumblebee then looked back down to Team China. A boy once fought together with us. He did not hand the Allspark to Megatron even in the abyss of despair. Yet, in the end we failed him. He died. He once said, no sacrifice, no victory. I want to say the same thing right now. No sacrifice, no victory. Courageous humans, destroy the Allspark. You should not bear the fruit from the fault of us Transformers. Bumblebee, I am happy to have fought together with you. I cannot let sacrifices of all my friends be in vain. Although Optimus Prime intended to sacrifice himself for mankind. But he wouldn't be allowed to sacrifice himself just because he wanted to. He was protecting the space after all. He explained the spark within every Transformer was a mini Allspark without its unique power. The sparks radiated a power that protected nearby mechanical objects from the Allspark's power. The spark's powers are separated into two attributes much like yin, dark, and yang, light. If the Autobots' sparks are yang, the Decepticons' sparks are yin. Hence as the two parties of Transformers nears each other, they could sense the existence of the other even in their vehicle or object forms. Which means our plan to sneak into the Decepticon city becomes impossible as soon as our weapons become affected by the sparks. The only way we have at that point is to charge in after the nuclear strikes. The few of us might have to fight 1,000 or more Decepticons. This isn't a fight we can bear as such, we need to initiate a bait tactic. Xian looked at the people in front while eating a banana. Zheng felt strange as he looked at the banana. He thought to himself, why did this dude suddenly change his habit? But things that pertained to the team's survival took priority. He asked. I can understand having a bait to lure the majority of Decepticons away from the Allspark. Which is why you and Honglu should plan it out together and come up with the perfect plan. One more thing, about Optimus Prime. Zheng looked around and said awkwardly. Not going to lie. I admired Optimus Prime when I watched the animation and the movie. After his death, I did not watch the sequels. So I want to. Xian waved his hand. It isn't difficult to save Optimus Prime. The spark's power is also a form of energy. Coincidentally, energy is something we have great control over. The One Ring. Your chi can be converted into the spark's power or even to the Decepticon spark's power. Unfortunately, we haven't obtained the Decepticon spark's form yet. I understand. Xian showed an expression of enlightened. He put his hand over his forehead and murmured to himself. It had been so long since Zheng saw such action from Xian. He always understood everything without you even realizing when. Expressions of enlightenment were extremely rare. Although Zheng didn't know what he figured out. The One Ring is a product of the Saints, similar to the mask. However, neither of them are complete products. It seems like all the quest items are such products. The One Ring can convert energy. The Golden Mask allows a person in the 4th stage to experience the 5th stage once. The Spear of Osiris, the Bracelet of Anubis are all weapons or items with a main focus on energy manipulation. What the Saints are trying to tell us, perhaps we speculated it wrong. We were wrong. Perhaps God's realm isn't created as a training ground to create new saints, perhaps this is the last refuge created to leave their final words. Xian frowned. It would be beyond any living being's capacity to deduce the truth with the little amount of information in hand. Not even he could accomplish this feat with his intelligence. Xian needed information to deduce and he was met with such lack of information. What are the saints trying to tell us? The One Ring, the Spear of Osiris, the Golden Mask, Xiaochen that was related to the wipe of the saints. What are they trying to tell us? Seeing the frowning was getting increasingly tense in Xian, Zheng hurriedly said. Leave this for later. Let's talk about what's coming now. Since the issue concerning Optimus Prime is solved, the remaining questions is choosing the bait. This is going to be an extremely dangerous task. You can't accomplish it without the necessary strength. Why don't I be the person of choice? I should have the strength for this task. Xian rejected the suggestion firmly. No. Your combat strength is important for the ambush. You will likely fight dozens or more Decepticons at the same time. Your task is to defeat them and seize the Allspark. So you can't be the bait. The person of choice is. Fuck. It's definitely going to be me. I don't know how much he hates me. He's been intentionally difficult with me every time. Gondo was hating him. Xian turned to Honglu and said. I will hand the task to you. You can choose 3 people from the team aside from Zheng, Zero, and Lan. I don't care how you do it. We will ambush within an hour after the nuclear strike. Your task is to lure away at least 70% of all the Transformers. When our team ambushes, there can't be more than 30% of the Decepticons protecting the Allspark. Understood. The order had such a militaristic style. Xian only wanted the results and disregarded the process. Honglu accepted it without any hesitation. Seeing that Zheng wanted to say something, Xian said. As we get more members and our strength increase, the team must be reorganized. It is inevitable for us to end up with 2 parties and cooperate with each other. Our strength as team will increase as a result. The Transformers world isn't dangerous. It's perfect to let us become familiar with this style. This is the basic situation. Zheng and Gondo, for the next 5 days starting from this afternoon, you will proceed with the search. I will also proceed with my plan. Zheng, bring Lan back at the 3rd day whether you found the Allspark or not. Zheng smiled bitterly as he agreed. Was there really no danger in this world? The robots were in the millions, The Allspark's location was still unknown, and the power of the robots could all push the team into an abyss. Perhaps their only advantage was the influences they had obtained. The American government and military, and the nuclear weapons were their influences. These were probably the factors Xian believed could turn the tide of the battle. The key was how he controlled these influences. On the other hand, Honglu was lost in thought once he accepted the task from Xian. He was feeling unease. He handed the task to me. Did he perceive my plan? That can't be. I haven't shown any indication of the plan. He couldn't perceive it no matter how miraculous he is. Then why did he do this? The next day, Zheng brought Lan and Gondo piloted his robot to 2 different directions. They had to find the gather place of the Decepticons. Before they left, Zheng converted a bunch of fire energy stones into the Autobot Spark's power using the One Ring. He coated the Valkyrie's armor with this power. Once it neared any gather site of the Decepticons, they would attack him for certain. It saved him from attacking each city. Time flew by. The remaining 9 people stayed in Shelter 1. They did not do anything out of place. The military also didn't place much control over them. As Xian handed out some minor sci-fi items, the researchers went into mad scientist mode and researched the items with all their attention. A scrap metal that was completely different from any metal in this earth. Humans did not have the technology to replicate this metal. This was a scrap Xian got from the Valkyrie, a piece of Gundanium alloy. The American government focused their attention on him. Then, did you do all of this for the nuclear weapon passwords? They are dynamic passwords. Each one can only be used once and each nuclear weapon requires a new password. Can you steal all the passwords? Zheng was curious. Xian shook his head. It's not possible to steal all the passwords. There is no need to steal but rather control the generation. Due to the security placed on nuclear weapons, it is nearly impossible to steal the passwords from the outside. What about getting them from the inside? The moment they open the computer that contained the passwords is when we should act. Lan, Yinkong, start. The man named Xian was acting suspiciously. Top officials of the American government and military assembled in a secret conference room. Their topic was those who called themselves warriors from the future, and the man named Xian. I believe everyone understands that these people might have come from the future, but this possibility is low. Thus, I ordered surveillance 2 days ago. The latest surveillance technologies were set up in the rooms of their central figures. They seemed to have not discovered these cameras, and that was how we noticed Xian's abnormality. Roosevelt nodded to the soldier standing behind. The soldier went over to the wall and pressed a series of buttons. The room dimmed. The table in front of the group turned into a screen. The screen played a scene of Xian using a computer. Roosevelt said in a serious tone as he looked at the screen. This man's computer skills are extremely advanced. I sent an expert in the field to examine his computer after he left the room, but to no avail. He cleaned all the traces of ever using it. Furthermore, this computer is connected to the internal network of this base. Our expert then analyzed from our network and discovered that he attempted to hack into our classified areas. He has opened a crack in our firewall, which points to the location of the password for our nuclear weapon arsenal. Everyone in the room was shocked and angry. A black officer shouted. What are we waiting for? Arrest them, then interrogate who they work for. How can we tolerate these people? I knew they were lying. People from the future? How can such a thing be believed? Roosevelt turned to a man among the researchers. Go over the items brought by Xian, and the piece of metal. This researcher was older than Roosevelt, looking in his 60s or 70s. The old man stood up and looked down at the data on hand. His expression had a sense of fanaticism. The little things aren't as important for now. Those are only 50 years ahead of our technology. The key is the technological advancement of the metal. I can't tell how many years it is beyond our technology, but I am certain this metal is beyond even the metal of the Transformers. This piece of metal represents a high-tech world way beyond our world. Furthermore, they possess applications of spatial technology. Do you know what it means? Mature spatial technology is 300 to 500 years ahead of us. This isn't something you can fake. I believe they truly come from the future. I do not wish to understand the filth of your politics. I am just a researcher, one who wishes to study the wonders of spatial technology. Some of the politicians blushed. Their evidences to invalidate the future humans' claim were the lack of protection Team China had against the power of the Allspark, and that they had no knowledge of what the last hopes of mankind were. However, based on what the researcher had said, this team of future warriors might perhaps be victims the future government threw to this world, either due to using unstable time-space technology or political reasons that denied them access to top classified information. The future government might have control over the Allspark. Roosevelt said awkwardly. It is too early to conclude whether they are victims of politics. Based on certain information we have, they possess the attributes of people from the future. The advanced weapons, the spatial technology, and the physical attributes of their bodies could prove they have come from the future. Yet, at the same time, there are many flaws we cannot find an explanation to. We have to continue monitoring them. The door to the room was suddenly pushed open. Everyone in the room was surprised and turned toward the door. Several men in black attires were standing there and yelled in a panic. Mr. President, the surveillance videos show Xian has breached into the location containing the nuclear weapon arsenal passwords. Impossible. Roosevelt shot up, terrified. That's impossible. The black box sends the password to the military bases, which in turn send them to the nuclear missiles. The key to the black box never leaves me. How could he break into the black box? He took off a normal-looking silver key from his neck. This key signified the highest power of the country, the key that controlled nuclear weapons. Cold sweat streamed down everyone. It was not normal technology that was stolen but nuclear weapons. One missile could wipe out a city. In this situation where mankind was in a calamity, a nuclear missile could drive mankind into destruction. Hurry. Keep Xian under watch. Do not let him get into contact with any of his team. Do not let him leave his room. Cut off his access to internet. If he forces his way out of the room, fire. Roosevelt then ran toward his room. The black box was a laptop. A key was required to turn on the laptop. The president had to turn on the laptop with his key and generate a password. 3 other people then had to verify the password before sending it to the nuclear missile sites. Once the main officer in control and his assistant officer verified the password again, they could fire the nuclear missile. The password began at the key, which was why it signified the highest authority of the country. And now this authority was stolen. How can this be possible? The key is still in my hand. How could it get stolen? Roosevelt murmured to himself. He was drenched in cold sweat. Despite hearing that Xian had obtained the password, he would not believe it without confirming it with his own eyes whether the black box was safe or stolen away. Roosevelt ordered several guards to watch the door, then rushed into his room and locked it. He walked over to the wall and entered a set of password. The wall opened up, revealing a rack holding a black box. He took off the key from his neck with his trembling hands. He carefully inserted the key. With a turn of the key, the black box opened up. Embedded inside was a black laptop. The screen lighted up. Roosevelt took several deep breaths. He entered a password over 40 digits long. A menu appeared on the screen and the item noting new passwords was 0. The password hasn't been stolen. Roosevelt wiped the sweat off his face. He was nearly drained. The phone rang at this moment, which scared Roosevelt for a moment before he reached for the phone in his pocket. Mr. President, we have checked our network. There are no signs of being hacked and the section related to the nuclear weapon password is intact. No traces in the firewall. It was a mistake on our agents. Roosevelt breathed out. Understood. Halt the surveillance on Xian. He's freed of suspicion. As soon as he turned off the phone, something struck his mind and he fell into a hazy state. A little girl walked out from the shadows in the corner. It was Yinkong. She walked past Roosevelt to the laptop, then inserted a CD into the drive. A series of characters flowed down the screen. A minute later, the screen returned normal and Yinkong removed the CD. Xian, delivery completed. I will hide until the guards change shift. Yinkong muttered in her mind. Xian's voice sounded. Thank you for the work. The password is in our hand. Lan, remove psyche control and erase this piece of memory. Those who had been watching the scene unfold admired Xian. Honglu curled his lips despite knowing it was beautifully played out. The firewall was difficult to break through from the outside, but how about bypassing it and obtaining the password from the inside? He might not have come up with the same plan that Xian did. The 4th day after Gondo left, he found the gathering place of the Decepticons. The number far exceeded their imagination. Located near the intersection between Missouri and Illinois. Gondo muttered to himself while looking at a map. Judging by the locating system you gave me, this place should be St. Louis. The city was raised by the Decepticons long before and rebuilt into a steel fortress. Everything from the ground to buildings are made of metal. 4 steel towers hundreds of meters tall stood on the city's 4 sides. Area. Xian frowned. Gondo shook his head. Haven't examined its size yet. Judging by the scope, the fortress isn't huge. Smaller than the original St. Louis. Ruins of the original city have been cleared. However, a swarm of robots marched out as soon as I went near the fortress. Their numbers covered the whole ground and sky. Most robots weren't able to transform, but the missiles coming from the ground alone were threatening enough. Luckily I was still several hundred meters up in the air. The dragon's hard necklace also shined and saved me from being blasted into pieces. That was when I realized it's the main base of the Decepticons. And then hundreds of flying vehicles rose from the ground. Helicopters, fighter jets, and even a few space shuttles transformed from the Decepticons. These flying vehicles were much more powerful. The first round of fire consisted of energy balls the size of basketballs. They exploded violently on the barrier and dropped the Valkyrie's energy reserve down to half in just a second. I escaped by activating the electric jet system. The Valkyrie only has less than 20% energy remaining now. Gondo was thankful to have escaped and also exclaimed. The rest of the team here frowned. Zheng said. Are there that many Transformers? The original movie only has several actual Decepticons. The number doesn't reach high even after they summoned their people from space. Hundreds that could transform into flying vehicles. The original Decepticons differed from those that turned into robots on Earth from the power of the Allspark. They were composed of a different metal and possessed different weapons. Robots turned on Earth used weapons that existed on Earth such as Gatling machine guns and anti-tank missiles. Original Decepticons used energy weapons and more advanced missiles. Their transforming ability bestowed them increased agility. An original Decepticon could take on dozens of normal robots. Honglu shook his head. Not surprising. How should I explain? Let's start from the origin of the Autobots and Decepticons based on the movie, not the animation, since we are in the movie's world. The transformers came into existence from the effect of the Allspark. The Allspark's power could turn mechanical objects in Earth to robots. How are they different from the robots formed in Cybertron? Why are the robots from Earth weaker than the ones from Cybertron in the movie? Is it solely due to the metal compositions? That would only contribute to the difference in their armor and weapons and doesn't explain why they couldn't transform. My view is the robot's power is directly proportional how much contact they have with the Allspark's power. The longer they are in close proximity with the Allspark, the more powerful they become. It's only a speculation, but this hypothesis answered the question of the difference in power, and also why so many transforming robots came into existence. The Decepticons have possessed the Allspark for some time now, enough to evolve some robots. Evolution. Just like how humans evolve after unlocking the genetic constraint, the robots were undergoing the same process. Although they relied on an external force for their evolution, it was still shocking to learn. If the situation remained, the Allspark would create millions of transformers as time went on, or perhaps super transformers. There was no way of winning at that point. Zheng sighed. The same old god. Placing us into seemingly safe circumstances, much like during the Alien movie. Back then, if we rode the starship back to Earth, the aliens would reproduce and swarm in a few years. Likewise, if we settled down here and trained, I might reach Zyuchen stage in 20 years, but the Decepticons would reach unimaginable numbers, and who knows how far their core robots could evolve. Most of the team had the same thoughts. God did not give them any time limit for this world, but the situation was clear that the longer they stayed, the more dangerous it became. A few more months down the road, and who could know how many high-level robots would come into being. Their priority was to nuke the Decepticons and enact the bait plan when their numbers were still low. Now that the goal was set, the Decepticons' main base was found, and the password control to the nuclear arsenal was in hand. There was no point to delay any further while the Decepticons grow. Team China departed with the American government. Zheng informed the location to the government under Xian, signed and bid farewell to Optimus Prime and Bumblebee with respect. He actually wanted to repair the two Autobots, but the feat was out of his abilities. No sacrifice, no victory, but the sacrifices are sometimes too sad. How good would it be if victories come without the cost of sacrifices? Zheng muttered to himself as he left. The strength of the Decepticons were overwhelming. The hundreds of transforming robots alone were difficult enough, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of regular robots. The survival rate even with the Dragon's Heart was extremely low. They needed a complete plan before attempting any attacks. We can stop here. 100 kilometers away from the fortress. Not more than a few minutes using the Skystyx jet system. Now the basic situation is Honglu's group head to west of the fortress. You will lure most of the robots out, then keep flying west. We will wait at east of the fortress. Once most robots are going, we will take care of the rest. Xian said to Honglu. Honglu twirled the hair in front of his forehead and carefully asked. The time? What time are you going to carry out the plan? Within how many days must I accomplish it? No set time. The nuclear arsenal password changes every 5 days. I am not going to activate the virus for 5 days. After 5 days, you should be on standby. You must enter the bomb site and initiate attack within 6 hours of dropping the 3 hydrogen bombs. Hydrogen bombs have less radiation than atomic bombs, and even if you get affected by the radiation, you can heal in God's dimension. There's no need to worry too much about radiation. Here are the charms of the 3 pure ones just in case. Put them on when you enter the site. Xian said as if he was placing orders. Honglu picked Kampa and Yinkong. They covered close and long range, magical and sci-fi weapons. Honglu also unlocked the genetic constraint with the help of the prototype T-virus, so he could pilot the Skystyx. Once Kampa and Yinkong enacted the bait plan, he could take them away with the Skystyx. He nodded to Xian without saying anything more. Then twirled his hair and pondered. The US president should have received my message and signal by now. Which means the army will surround it in at most a week. And then, using the backdoor left by Xian's plan, my plan will proceed smoothly following the nuclear attack. We will complete this movie without any loss. And you will know I am not weak. Honglu smiled. He looked at Xian, then at the steel tower far in the distance. Just a few more days and everything would come to a closure.